everyone, and thank you for joining me on another episode in the Command Block Testing World. Now this episode is going to be formatted a little bit differently, because I was looking back at the footage, and I think it took me around 20 minutes or so just to get a very basic part of this contraption that I've worked on here. And telling by the scale of how much bigger this is from anything else that I've done, I decided I would just re-record the footage for this episode. I like going through the process because it shows my thought process and changes I've made, just more behind the scenes. So what I have created here is GTA 5 Airstrikes in Minecraft. In GTA 5 you could call Merryweather, I believe it is, and then you can get an airstrike, you throw it down, plane flies by and it'll drop explosions, basic stuff. I added two modes for mine. Supply drop and missiles, where it attacks an area or it just provides a chest full of very, very overpowered stuff. So how I did it is, when I'm holding a renamed snowball that's just named to flare, it'll also test if I have a score of used flare that's higher than 1. Used flare is a score that increases every time you throw a snowball. So when I throw a snowball, it's going to mark the snowball with a scoreboard. Then it's going to put me on a cooldown so I can't use it immediately again. Then it's going to summon an armor stand at the snowball. And then this just sets this block over here and does other things to configure it. This whole circuit here is just detecting when it hits the ground. And then it summons an entity out in the distance, an armor stand. That armor stand acts as the airstrike. And then what it does, it sets its direction, and then it just constantly teleports it in the direction that it's facing, while also using a clone command on it to create an airplane around it. Over here you can see the original model that I planned, but Minecraft doesn't seem to like it when you spam the clone command 20 times a second. So not only did I have to shrink the model down to prevent lag, but I also had to reduce the amount of times I'm running it down to just a basic hopper clock. But either way, that does the cloning. This just detects if the airstrike has gotten near the flare that I'm going to throw. It just executes it up in the sky. And this is how I switch from airstrike to supply drop. This is the supply drop stuff, this is the airstrike stuff. And then over here, this block will get set after those are run. And this is an entire method to summon a missile. It's just going to summon an armor stand, use spread players, then it's going to spread player over here, because that's going to be the delay between missiles. It prevents it from launching another one. Does all the preparation for it. These are just particles. And this is when the missile actually hits the ground. When it detects one of the missile armor stands is on the ground, it's just going to set the game rule mob griefing to false. Then it's going to summon a large fireball that just has a downward motion, so it immediately hits the ground. Now I just run a few particles and kill the armor stand that's on the ground. And this circuit here resets everything. One thing that I didn't do here, but I could have, is reset the mob griefing to true. I decided against that. So, without further ado, let's see it. Well, that's not a great start. Get a few particles for the snowball, and then the flare actually places, and then you get this little effect that looks like a flare. You can see in the distance that's the airplane. It doesn't look the greatest because of how slow the clone command runs. But if I were to do it any faster, it would just be a horrendous mess of ghost blocks leading up to it. I believe it should be on, yep, it's on missile mode. So you can see the missiles coming down. They actually do damage if I can grab the spider real quick. And you can see they do damage. Quite a lot of damage. There's 15 in total, but I could control how many that fall if I wanted. Then the airplane just goes off into the distance until it eventually despawns. There you go, that's the entire system. Now, like I said, I could swap it over to supply drops, so I get a chest of goodies instead. So I'll throw that once the cooldown is off. There it goes. I want to do something really quick. I want to show my point. if I set this to repeat, once this gets powered, it's going to clone 20 times a second until it's unpowered. So you'll be able to see, to a closer effect, why I couldn't spam the clone command, because it does that. It has all these ghost blocks, then you can hardly even see it. The only time you really can see it is when it gets close, and even then it's iffy because it doesn't render all the time. So it's a real shame, but it's understandable why it happens. There's the chest falling. It's just a shame. It doesn't look as glorious as it could have, but what can you do, really? There it goes in the distance. So 2 flaws of this system is that, of course, since I'm using the clone command, if anything gets in the way, it'll just clear it out. And the other flaw is, if I was on a mountain, like I was way up here, and then I launched a flare downwards, of course, if I was higher up, but the airplane would actually cut through whatever I was on. So I haven't actually created measures against that, but there's no real good way of me doing that either. So there are some limitations to this that won't make it as practical as it could be. But in the end, it's still a really cool system. I like how it works. Oh, I never showed the chest, so yeah, it's quite overpowered. Quite overpowered. But that's about everything, so thank you all so much for joining me on this episode in the Minecraft command block testing world. Hope you all enjoyed. I will hopefully see you all in my next video, so if I will, see you there. I'll be